Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Lisa Oligas. KGCS is making unique connections with the music industry through our other student-hosted programs Beyond Billboard Hits music videos and Behind the Bands. Today, those connections are bringing us special guests from Houston, Texas, who give us insight into the world of country music and the charts that track artist success. In this edition, we will talk with artist Chris Gardner en route to Nashville to perform at the Americana Fest, and then back to Texas to be awarded Song of the Year from the CMA of Texas. But first, we begin by talking with Mary Minter, the current director of the Country Music Artist Association of Texas, which is preparing to celebrate its 50th anniversary with the 2025 CMA of Texas Awards. Mary, thank you for making the journey to visit with us.
Thank you so much for asking us. We're delighted to be here.
This is awesome. So you have been the director of CMA of Texas for 12 years, but you got to start many moons ago in radio, and you have had a very interesting journey that brought you to the CMA of Texas. So give us a little history. You actually started your career and all this in Austin, Texas, correct?
Well, I did, in this phase of it. It's been a lot of career. I wandered off into the internet in about '94. I'd been in the ad agency always before, and I was always looking for that medium that was specific, that you can match a dot to something, you know, because that's important. And so I had a client who, actually, it was Roger Beasley, who owned car dealerships in Austin. And I get this phone call out of the blue at my new little ad agency in Austin. And he says, I want to sell cars on the internet. Do you know anything about that? I went, oh my goodness, no, I don't. Anyway, I went to the bookstore. They had 5 books on a shelf, and I bought them all. And then a year later, I woke up one morning and went, wow, having been in radio and knowing how independent artists never got programmed, I went, this could really change the music world. And not that I'm that kind of prophet that said that, but that was my thought. And I formed AMI, which was Austin Music International, and it just took off.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been credited with, Yahoo even called you the first ever virtual record label, which is pretty amazing. How did that impact the industry by getting people online? You even put CMA Nashville online.
Right. Yep, I did. After Mr. Beasley called me, my very first business that I put online was called Auto Group. And then I got it, and all of a sudden in Austin, which was beginning to be very techy, Intel was looking for a place to build their building, and I was just there kind of at a right time. And then I get another phone call from a gentleman who owns a little company called CompuBooks. And he'd already made $1 million just selling books about computers on the internet. And so things just started to kind of roll. And by the time I did the music thing, I mean, money was ridiculous in Austin at that time. I mean, I would get the phone call, I'd like to meet with you, we want to invest in you. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I had this medium, you know, that seemed advantageous for independent musicians. And then same thing, I got the call from the Texas Music Office. Do you want to go with us and take Texas music to Europe? I said, sure, why not? But I had funding. I had the significant amounts of money to do what I needed to do. And right before we went to Europe, which was in August of '97, I got the phone call from the president of the CMA in Nashville and said, we need to meet with you. We understand you know something about a new medium. And so as soon as I got back, I went, and again, I had funding, so I helped do the T1 because you had to have a direct line. You know, you didn't have Wi-Fi then, so it was all very, very new. And I helped do that. And as I was there, I was thinking, why aren't we doing this in Texas? We need a CMA of Texas, but I didn't even know it existed already. And so, you know, just synergy, Lisa, things, and paying attention. That's one of my mottos, pay attention.
So this was at a time, I mean, the CMA of Texas, artists like Waylon and Willie, that's who you were, Willie Nelson, in the early days.
They were having a hard time in the industry. Wow. Because their music wasn't neatly fitting, and they were very, very roots-oriented. Waylon wanted to tell his stories. Willie wanted to tell his, you know, and they just weren't getting along. So some things began to happen. And I was there in that era when things were changing. And Americana actually was birthed in that era, and South by Southwest presented it. I think it was like '98 when they announced that there was a new genre that had originated called Americana. So it's just, you know, been logical to do it.
So, and what is Americana? How would we define that? I mean, and why is it its own genre? Why is it important it has a genre other than country?
The adjectives that I think fits it best is, number one, it's honest and it's a story. And it goes back to, in my way overtrained in the fine arts, it goes back to when I'm looking at an artist and they're giving me an original tune, including performing it, are you believable? Do I believe what you're singing to me? Do I believe that story? So there's some strict rules for how that originates.
Okay. So you mentioned to me that you say Texas is its own brand.
Yes.
In and of itself. Because, I mean, not many other states have their own Country Music Artists Association. We have CMA Nashville. That's what people assume CMA is. But is Texas even older than the Nashvilles?
Actually, the CMA of Texas isn't older than. It's turning 50, and theirs is about 65.
Okay. Very close.
But the irony of that, and why I say that, because I didn't know this before we took Texas music to Europe. We took it to a huge festival called PopCom, which doesn't exist anymore. When 9/11 happened, and it was supposed to happen like that month, it didn't happen. Okay. And so then it got folded into Midem, which is on the Riviera of France, which has been an old music festival. Well, but those 4 years that we went there, we were treated like royalty purely because we were Texas music.
Wow.
And so, and I just began to really understand that there's a brand in that you can work with that establishes you, especially outside of this country. No one ever asked me about Nashville or New York or LA, and we were televised. I mean, Viva Television put us on TV. I mean, it was just a big deal.
So Europeans love Texas country music,
and they really don't even distinguish between what's traditional country or on the rock side or the blues side. You know, if it's from Texas, they just want to hear it and they want to buy.
So that does give Texas its own kind of standing in the music world. And you even have your own music charts. And you mentioned the word roots. Right. That's part of the name of the music chart, correct?
Well, the chart that's the official chart of Texas is Texas Regional Radio Reports, TRRR. It was originated in the 70s by Dave Smith, and it is published and received by Billboard. But that's the one chart that has the Billboard stamp on it. The others do not. Okay. Yeah. And so, yes, there are many other charts. And those are significant. But and you've heard me say, because I said to you on the phone, we don't really put a whole lot of value in that. I mean, because for one thing, it doesn't really necessarily tell the story of the artist. It's publicity, and it gives a measure, but that's not the most important measure in our world at the CMA of Texas.
Yeah. So let's talk about your role with CMA. I mean, what is your role as director? And then how do you end up connecting with artists like Chris Gardner, who we're going to talk to?
Well, when I was asked by the person that had kind of received the CMA of Texas on his desk, which was Ludin Corpus, he was elderly, and he also didn't know what to do with it. And the disc jockey that had worked with Mr. White of the Broken Spoke had passed away. So it was just kind of in limbo. And he just calls me and says, "You need to take this and do something with it." And I just said, okay, you know, because I had had that CMA experience earlier in Nashville. And I also realized way before that, back in '78, I had been there for a period of time and interviewing the artists. And I was just smitten with how original and authentic Bill Carlisle, the Louvin brothers, Porter Wagner, Jeannie Seeley, who's still around. I mean, those artists were so genuine and authentic, and they weren't anything like we had in Texas. I mean, those were just worlds apart. And so all of that sort of made sense to me, you know. I think, again, a true artist, you're born into that. It's not about what you are, you know, it's about who you are. Yeah. And if music becomes your expression, then hallelujah. When I kicked off AMI, one of the things on my very first website said that we are interested in the authentic artist who is a living art form. And that's still true even with the CMA of Texas.
Somebody can't just, I want to be a rock star, or I want to be a country star. It's just in you.
Yeah, that's right. And we won't be interested. And I learned that the hard way in AMI. I wasted a lot of money in wannabes, and that just doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
And
Okay.
I mean, maybe it does in some instances. I won't make that as a blanket statement, but it didn't work for me.
Yeah. And so you don't put a lot of stock into the digital numbers or the hits on, you know, the internet or Spotify and all that. You say it's more important to be a performer.
Absolutely.
Why is that important to you?
Well, for one thing, even the label artists, that's where they earn their money, and their tour and their merch. They know that the digital formats are not going to pay them. I mean, you might get a check for $30, you know, from 5 million hits on Spotify. I mean, you'd starve to death on that. And the record labels don't make that kind of money. They're not signing artists with big sign-on bonuses. That's not happening, you know.
Now, in the pop world, vinyl has made a comeback. Right. Is it in the Americana world as well?
Absolutely.
I mean, are people like, hey, I want to collect that?
You bet. Yes, it is. And interestingly enough, when we first went to PopCom in '97, there were vinyl booths all over. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, can this really be, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. You know what? It's a lot of, again, being sensitive to what you think can work for someone. And I think that's, you know, interpreting. And that was my forte in the ad agency world, to try to really work to understand a business. And then, again, create a program or a campaign and then match it up to the most viable customer base. The same is true with an artist.
So you're then behind the big award celebration coming up 2025,
Yes.
CMA of Texas, and Chris is going to win what award?
He is actually winning the Americana Album of the Year. And this single that we zeroed and specifically are presenting is called Real American Hero. And the origin of that is just very, very precious to me, in that he was a single dad. So unlike, again, him certainly honoring men and women that are at war and that defend our country, but a real American hero, as this song, you know, its origin is the one that is every day, and making that family alive and protecting them and providing for them. And this, you know, he wrote this album and recorded it in 2020 as COVID was happening. So it really didn't get any presentation. I didn't know that until I met Chris at a kind of an open mic event at McConaughey's Mucky Duck in kind of the downtown Houston. And I was very impressed with how he was so believable.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anything about him. You know, I just was invited and I went. And then I asked to meet with him, and I just was impressed.
Awesome.
You know, because it's kind of like, you know, they're great singers, but they don't really have anything authentic to sing about. Well, he's a great writer, and his voice and his delivery fits exactly what he has to say.
That's awesome.
So that's an artist.
Well, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by the CMA of Texas Song of the Year award-winning singer-songwriter Chris Gardner, who will talk about his rising Americana single, Real American Hero. We're going to take a look at that music video as we go to break.
He wakes up in the morning, rolls up out of bed and pours himself some coffee, gets the children dressed and fed, gets them out the door and off to school and to work from 9 to 5. It ain't gonna make him no millionaire, but it's enough to stay alive. He's a real American hero, and he's carrying a heavy load. He ain't got no suit of armor or no castles filled with gold. He's got his life with his children, and that's all he'll ever need. He's a real American hero, he's got everything. Got no crystal chandeliers, got no fancy car, but a man who's rich in peace and love is a better man by far. Isn't always easy, 'cause nothing ever comes for free. There ain't no other place in this whole wide world he would rather be. He's a real American hero. He's carrying a heavy load. He ain't got no suit of armor or no castles filled with gold. But he's got his life with his children. That's all he'll ever need. Yeah, he's a real American hero. He's got everything. And sometimes it's more than he can take, and he almost feels like giving up the fight.
We're back and talking about the CMA of Texas with Mary Minter, the director. And now we welcome a CMA of Texas award winner, artist Chris Gardner, who is en route to Nashville to perform at the Americana Fest, and then back to Texas to be awarded Song and Album of the Year from CMA of Texas. He joins us now along with Mary Minter. Welcome, Chris Gardner, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Yes, we're on a whirlwind tour here across the country. Thank you so much for having us.
I understand you received the 2025 Americana Album of the Year, am I right?
Yes.
From the CMA
Yes.
of Texas for your LP Second Helpings. What does this kind of recognition mean to you?
It means the world. It's just, I'm honored and humbled. It's a kind of validation just with the incredible people over at the CMA of Texas and all of the artists that have been through there. You know, the songs come from your head and they start from there onto a notepad, then through the studio, and after the record comes out, you just hope that they're accepted and that other people, you know, your contemporaries, consider them good music. So I'm honored.
Well, there is some trial and error. Let's talk about your
Yes.
career. You've been making music about 20 years or so and have 8 albums. Is that right? I mean,
Yes.
What got you started? What was like back then?
I played in bands. I started writing poems and songs through high school and played in bands. I came to Texas to go play baseball at Texas at Arlington, and it hurt my shoulder. A family friend had a band that was playing all over Dallas and Fort Worth, and they had a recording studio in his rehearsal place. So I came over and I recorded a few songs, and they've got, there was a contest going on. It was called 12 by 12, and they were taking 12 local bands all doing one song. And I recorded it with them, and then it got picked out of 1,000 entries. It got picked in there, and you know, a little while later, they were playing it on the radio, and I'm thinking, this is easy. You know, you record your first song, and then they put it on the radio. You know, it was 20 years before I got back on the radio again and realized it wasn't that easy. But that kind of kick-started everything.
Yeah. Well, Mary talked about you raising 2 sons on your own while having a music career. How hard is that?
It was really hard. I had to kind of stop playing out as much, you know, because I mean, my normal routine was, as most of the parents out there know, you get up at 6 in the morning, you breakfast made, get them ready for school, you go work, come pick them back up, and then it's dinner and homework. So what I kept doing is kept writing and kept going back in the studio every 3 or 4 months, thinking that there'll be a time down the road where I'll have my time to come out and see how it'll all work out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because Mary said performing is important. So
it is.
Now, I've been told your songs are very autobiographical. So how does that life's journey influence your music?
Well, those were always the songs that I grew up loving. The songs that they seemed like they were talking to you. You know, the big choruses, and it has saved me thousands of dollars in therapy bills too. Because when I have something to work through, I just write it out on paper. And I think that relates. That people can relate to that more when they hear the songs. It's the stories of their lives. Everybody goes through this. Everybody falls in love. Everybody gets their heart broken. Everybody wants the best for their kids. So I think that's what comes across the most.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes does it mean sort of having to be vulnerable and open yourself up for some pain? I know you had a situation with Elle.
Yes.
You wrote the song. Tell us about that, and is it that hard but maybe cathartic?
It does. It is, and it's cathartic, and it is gut-wrenching. Sometimes you have to separate yourself from it a little bit. But the good thing about that, if there's any good thing that comes from that, is raising the awareness to as many other, so many people that have been through that also that nobody would ever talk about.
So that was a loss of a grandchild?
Yes. My daughter-in-law and my son and daughter-in-law lost her during the pregnancy, 20 weeks in. And, you know, it wasn't until after this all happened that so many other people shared that journey of how heartbreaking and heart-wrenching it is. That, you know, we used to think in this day and age that couple gets pregnant, 9 months later you bring the baby home after painting the room and picking the crib out, and that's not always the case. You know, we're reminded how much of a miracle it is.
Yeah, and people can certainly relate to that pain.
Yes.
So you are from Houston, and you tried other music scenes, but you keep coming back. You've traveled some. What do you like about Houston?
I did well as an independent artist. There's not a lot of money in it for everything. So I have my own business. I've got a lock and security company that I run that's based out of Houston. So I've traveled and played shows from LA to New York, and it's just Houston's home now for me.
So Mary doesn't put a lot of stock in charts, but they are important sometimes. And you've been like #3, and you've had, you know, a couple songs hitting the charts. How does that make a difference to you? Does it give you momentum? Does it kind of help you go, okay, this song hit? Does it influence your style?
It does. It's more the validation again. You know, as a songwriter, and I know you all touched on it earlier with, I forget who quoted that out, but if all you think about is writing, then you're a writer. You know, whether you're making a living at it or not. So it's just good of more validation that when you write these songs, you hope you put them out there, and I consider myself a good judge of music, and just let people listen to it and get the feedback on it. And when you get the positive feedback, you know that, okay, well, this really was something.
Yeah. So Mary, you talked a little bit about what you like about Chris's music. What is key to someone like him? What advice would you give to independent songwriters like Chris who are trying to make it, you know, and you said, you know, he is a good songwriter. He seems to speak from the heart. What other things would you say are kind of a key to success, to getting on the charts, to getting their music out there?
Well, I think in the breadth of time and length of time that I've done this, what I see, and I see it consistently more even today, is that if you can write, I mean, if you're writing from a source, and again, I'm a writer, I'm a published author, but I'm not a songwriter. I have a lot of phrases and words in songs out there, but that's another story, and I love it. But if you're genuinely convincing about your song, it's going to find its audience. And that's the one thing you learn about being trained in the arts. You cannot do something praying and hoping it will sell. You just cannot do that. You've got to write what you know and have the courage to do it. And then in Chris's situation, he is a good guitarist. Now, I don't play an instrument. So when I write, I give ideas, I can do hook lines and that kind of thing. But it's just got to be believable. And it's hard to fake that. And especially with the digital world. I mean, my goodness, you know, in the old days, artists could hide their vices behind the scene. You know, it wasn't unless they got, you know, caught. And then it might be a bad story. That's not the way it is today. You know, you're open all the time for scrutiny. And so I think you have to be genuine, or you need to give it up, one of the two.
And people can find out your history, and they'll know everything
exactly
about
right.
you. You kind of have to be an open book.
You have to be an open book.
And so if you're not comfortable with that, which I can totally understand, then you need to own it up, you know, and get on with it, because it's not a good idea for you, is what I would say. But then, okay, so there's the writing. And the next thing, again, which involves performance, is, are you willing to get your skill set up, if you don't have it, to match the delivery of your story? Yeah. And so there again, you know, that's another bit of business. And then the other is about, in that performance, are you prepared to really go forward? I mean, because you don't want to waste a record label's time, or a promoter's time, or a booking agent time. You know, is it good timing for you to really focus and zero in? So there's a lot of conditioning there.
And you mentioned touring. And so, Chris, do you like to tour? I mean, now that you're older and maybe your kids are grown up, Do you like touring? What do you get out of it? Do you feel a connection with audiences?
Sure, I love live performance. The problem, I play a lot of shows, but the problem with touring is just the financial responsibilities back in Houston. There's not a lot of money in it at this point until you can get on a major tour, and those are hard to get onto.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy the live performance because that's where the connection comes across. But as far as cross-country tours and things like that, I try to stay local still.
Yeah.
Well, and to his point, even almost 30 years ago when I first met Gary Morris, even the majors, they love small venues and they love small happenings because they're not seeing themselves on a TV screen. I mean, you know,
Right.
they just love that. And so he's getting our Living Legend Award this year. And we do this, well, there's one thing that we're very, there's no, you can't finagle this, and that is if you're going to receive an award from us, you must be present. And so we've never, in 12 years, we've only had one artist who didn't get to show up, and that was Tanya Tucker. And that was one of our shows in Lubbock. She fell, it was also during COVID, and she fell and broke a hip.
Wow.
And it was like 2 days before. So she sent her daughter, Presley. And Presley was just adorable, and she did back up to sing with Johnny Rodriguez, the song they had recorded together. So it was a wonderful event. But we've been very honored that our knowns and unknowns mix beautifully and become part of the community. And that's what we've strived to build.
What are the benefits of being an independent artist, and how do they then, you know, make a career of it? What would you say are the benefits for you, Chris?
The benefits for me is you're not bound by the record label to say, hey, this song doesn't fit into quite this genre, or we don't want you to do it this way. I mean, the cons are you don't have the money backing from the record labels
Right.
to do that, or the support. You know, I know John in Houston was here not too long ago also, but the whole PR side is so important also. And normally with a major label, you would have all that backing.
Okay.
And that has changed too, because once again, they're not making the money that they're accustomed to making. So what the value that I feel like we bring, and that I'm so happy we can do it, it's like working with John. He and I we can interview and understand an artist and figure out if our time, even if there's not money in it for us, if our time is going to be worthwhile. Is it well spent? And so he and I both look at things really kind of through that lens, because ultimately, and this was true in AMI before I was doing CMA of Texas, if I deemed that an artist really had what I would call the it, in every sense, me checking all the boxes, then that's just an investment, you know. And I was willing to make it and did many times. And about 50% right and about 50% wrong.
Yeah. Well, and some people have the talent, and it doesn't come to fruition. But congratulations on your award, and good luck at the concert. And we thank you both for joining us and sharing all this information.
Thank you for inviting
Thank you
us.
so
It's
much
delightful.
for having us, Lisa. Thank you.
That wraps up this edition of Newsmakers. Chris will also be appearing on our Behind the Band show, so keep an eye out for those air dates. Thanks to our special guest for traveling to see us from Houston, Texas, and thanks you for watching.